Hi and welcome to Created IP. In this episode we'll be talking about how the world sees you. My name's Steve Murray and I'm joined today by
Grant Hayward,
Alice Wright,
Kerry Bynum.
Well, thank you all for joining me today. So how the world sees you, this is in terms of businesses, products perhaps, and what they do to ensure that the world understands who they are and what they do. In a large sense, branding. Now, branding can come in lots of different forms, and obviously Grant and Alice, you're specialists in trademark attorneys. Is branding the same as a trademark?
In a word, no. A brand could be anything. A brand can cover any products. It's not specific. The difference between a brand and trademark is a legal right which protects a brand. But a trademark is like a sign. It doesn't have to be a visual sign, but it has to be something that consumers can recognise and tie down in what it is. And it has to be registered on specific goods and services. A brand can have a trademark, and that will be the product or service that the brand is being used upon. The brand tends to be wider than what just a trademark is. A trademark is, as I said, tied to a specific product or service. A brand is not tied to any specific product or service.
That's really interesting because clients always talk about, I want to protect my brand. So that's really interesting.
and that's where we get on to more than just trademarks. Don't we?
Yeah,
say,
exactly.
Well, actually, we consider the whole array of your brands, which I'm sure we're going to get well into today.
And actually that's a really common misconception. They think, a lot of times they'll say, we want to protect our brand. And they think that they can file a trademark which will cover anything, any goods or any services.
And anywhere as well.
In the world. And I'm like, no, a trademark is a national right specific to the country. A trademark is tied to a specific good or service. So yes, you can have a wide brand and you can cover lots of goods and services in your trademark, but it's not the same.
So when we're talking about passing off,
Yes.
what do you think about that in relation to the concept of brand?
So
Yes.
Go for it. Over to you, Steve.
Yeah, so with passing off, the business or the particular product has had a consistent get-up. The way it looks, the way it's been designed, perhaps even the font that's used. And if they've been using that consistently, what happens in the public or the consumer market is that there's recognition of that. They generate what we call goodwill and reputation. Once you've got that goodwill, obviously if you're doing incredibly well, there's going to be people who want to ride on your coattails, want to come along and say, actually, you know what, you've got a really good concept here. I want to steal that, whether that's be a swoosh on your trainers or golden arches on your burger joint. That concept of brand recognition is what most businesses are seeking to obtain. And those who are passing off are seeking to ride on the coattails of those who are already successful. So with passing off, you've got to establish three things. That's that you've got goodwill, that there's been a misrepresentation by the other party, that they are misleading the consumer into thinking that there's some sort of commercial relationship between them and you who already own that successful brand. And then you've got to show that there's been damage caused, whether it be because you put out a product which looks like theirs, or through a website that's faked that looks like theirs, and that product doesn't work. And the consumer thinks, well, I bought it from this really established brand name. Those goods weren't up to the quality I want them to be. Therefore, I'm going to lose faith in that brand, and it damages that goodwill.
Yeah, and just picking up on the goodwill reputation point, because if your brand is your identity and it's how the world sees you, as you said to us at the start, then your reputation comes directly from that.
Absolutely.
And in proving passing off, that's your first step is proving to the courts why you have a brand.
Why you've got a right to enforce.
Yes. So that's why your brand is, it is your business, and it is how the world quite literally sees you and how you want the world to see you, more importantly.
Absolutely, and it needs to be protected. I mean, in other episodes we've talked about the different types of IP, and obviously the two of you are here today to talk from a trademarking perspective. So trademarks aren't the be-all and end-all of a brand. You said that earlier, but what other tactics can businesses use to assert their identity?
Well, I guess I like to think that passing off and trademarks kind of go hand in hand, and that the first principle you will have passing off, and then on the second hand you have a trademark. And passing off is a great common law right, but it's harder to prove.
It can be quite expensive.
It can be quite expensive to prove. And so if you have a brand and you have the right to have enough goodwill in your brand for a passing off action, you should really already have a trademark, because a trademark is a clear-cut monopoly right to use that name or sign in the course of trade, in business and commerce.
For what you've registered.
Just what you've registered, yeah? So it's a lot easier to say, well, you're simply using that brand. You don't have to prove damage, you don't have to prove goodwill. But in some ways, although this is just a me-ism, I guess, but I see a trademark as being like a physical or more an embodiment of goodwill. You've got a trademark. The goodwill that your business has should be embodied and formalised in a trademark. That would be as a trademark attorney, that's what I want to see. That's what when clients come to me, if they've got a business and they haven't got a trademark to cover that business, I'm like, you've got a business, yes, you can protect it by passing off, but an easier and more robust form of protection is a registered trademark. So that's how I kind of see it. I want my client to be safe. I don't want people copying their brand. I don't want them piggybacking off it. I don't want riding on the coattails. And the best way to do that is to take the goodwill and formalise it in a trademark.
Distinctive badge is
Yes.
just makes us happy.
But there are some limitations to what trademark registration can achieve.
Yes, that's
We
true.
saw that recently with geographical issues with particular clients whose name was quite descriptive, but certainly another company in a different part of the UK was using an almost identical name.
Yeah.
That is true.
'Cause-
I mean, anything can be a brand, anything can be a trademark, but I guess there are specific criteria attached with registration of a trademark.
And also functionality of a trademark as well.
Yeah, I mean-
No one's stopping someone using something very descriptive in trade, and actually that undertaking will be free for anyone to do that. But for it to actually function and be registrable is a completely different matter.
And you also have to register it, don't you? In the classes that you've registered your goods and services, you actually have to do that. And sometimes businesses evolve, don't
Yes.
they? And then they forget to update their registrations.
Forget to update it, and also, should we say, too overambitious sometimes as well. Just because they're launching, they think, I'm going to do ABC.
DEF.
We always say, exactly, all the way down to Z. And we always say, what's your 5-year plan, and be realistic with that. You know, if you're...
And that's because if you've registered something in a class that's not relevant to what your plan is, you would lose that registration.
Well, yeah, it's on other people to police that. But, you know, if someone sees you're not using it and wants it, what's stopping them knocking you out? And it's just unnecessary legal costs then, you know, and a headache, to be honest.
Of the evolving of the business is that you might sort of change your name or change how you present your name.
So if you've got a logo, you're changing the logo.
Yeah, exactly. But if you've registered the first one
you know,
and you've not updated it, then you're in the worst possible position, because you've got a period of time where you don't have any goodwill in the new logo.
You're not
You
using
might
the
not
old
have
one.
any protection, but you've not been using the old one.
Yeah.
So
until you can change
small
that around.
strategies like filing a trademark in black and white, you know, it protects you across all the colours, whereas if you do it in one colour, you know, someone could pin you to that. Same way as like words, you know, it's safe to go all capitals, but you might decide to do lowercase as well. If you think there's a chance you could use both. It's just covering every base really, so no one can accuse you of not using it in the exact form you registered it.
When thinking about brand protection, I guess there's something that is quite about trademarks which is generally misunderstood, and that is the difference between a logo mark and a word mark in respect to the scope of the right. So when you register a logo, what you're registering is the specific graphical format of the mark, and that is what is protected. But if you register the word mark, you're literally just protecting the word. So if you've got a word mark for, I'm trying to think of a random brand.
Say legal.
Legal, yeah. And then you've got a logo mark within it that has legal somewhere. The word mark will automatically be considered similar to the logo with legal in it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the mark is comprised in its whole entirety in the logo. But the other way around, if you have a logo with legal in it and a word for legal, that is not the entirety of the logo. So you've kind of got a situation where if you protect the word, you have protection for the word in any logo format. But if you protect only the logo, you've only got protection in that particular format. And therefore, this is something we'll probably move on to talk about later in a different episode, but the scope of confusion and the scope of similarity with a logo and a word are very different things.
But sometimes businesses don't have a choice. Sometimes the words that they want to use might already be registered in a different class, or it might be something that's just not that's descriptive. So we've talked to clients in the past where we say, well, okay, we'll incorporate that name in a logo.
You can build up your brand value and then have a pop at.
I think what you're really raising an interesting point here is when developing a brand. In a lot of cases, brands will develop naturally, and there's no planning. It kind of evolves, and there's no strategy. But if you're ever in a situation where you think, "Oh, I want to do something new, I want to create a brand," well, I think there's got to be a different process involved, and that is we often have clients come to us and we've got this new product and we want to call it something. And what a trademark attorney can do is do a search. So if you propose various names, we can then take that and check that someone else isn't using that mark or that brand already in relation to those goods and services.
I'm really glad you raised that because it was coming up in my mind just now after what we were talking about, because so many people are just so keen to jump on their new product and they don't put in that time at the start, which is so important. And it's quite often neglected.
Yeah, and also if you're infringing someone else's mark, you haven't.
Exactly.
I mean,
and then you're back to square one anyway. It's better to
paying damages in the process.
Yes, exactly. It unfortunately happens that in the natural evolution that you have a brand, and a few years down the line, you become successful, and someone makes a claim against you because they had a similar brand already existing. Now, that's something that can be checked, but it's something that you should, if you can, seek to avoid. What you do to avoid that is before you start using a brand, do a search and you establish what's out there already, because you don't want to change your brand.
What type of things should you be searching?
Oh, at minimum an identical search of if there's a word element.
Okay. So this is on the intellectual property website.
Yeah, it's searching registrations, but also just a common law search. Just
Google it.
There are all the search engines.
Okay. use a public search engine. Put in the name of whatever you want your brand, and then press search and see what hits there are.
Goods or service that you do, like handbags. Just stick it behind your brand name and you'll find out pretty quickly if someone else is selling handbags
under that brand.
That name.
So you mentioned internet search engines. Those work by identifying websites.
Yes.
Websites are pointed to by domain names.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, see that?
Nice. Smooth.
So with domain names, is that as good as a trademark?
As important as a trademark.
No?
I mean,
Okay.
I think I'll draw everyone's attention to what, as a trademark attorney, you know and you learn, is that when you file an application with the UKPA, before you file it, it warns you that as soon as you have filed a trademark application, your application will be published, and that if you haven't secured and registered a domain,
you probably want to do that.
You probably want to do that first, because you don't want, as soon as you publish the trademark application for the word or the brand, someone who might see that on the register is going to register a domain and take it from you, and then you'll
try and sell it to you at a much higher price if you ask them.
Exactly. So I always say, if you're thinking of a brand idea, you've got the concept in the back of your mind before filing a trademark. See what domains are available using
Firstly,
that, because
yeah.
there is an infinite number of domain registrations out there with different top level domains. And also and grammar also. It might be that you don't just need the brand name. Maybe you are happy to have a specific format like the brand and the goods together. But what it is having some kind of policy about which domains you want, which domains you register, and also, there's quite a few strategic things to think about when you're thinking about domain names connected to a brand. It's not quite as simple as I would like it to be.
Of course.
At the moment, the way the world is, domain names are kind of like the wild, wild west of intellectual property at the moment. The reason for this is you can access a domain from anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And once you've registered a domain, you cannot challenge a registration of a domain. A trademark, you register. If you haven't used it for 5 years, you can request cancellation of that trademark. Domains, as long as the person that registered the domain registered it before you, even if they're not using it for like 20
as long
years,
as they renew it, then
it's really, really
and the annoying
hard.
thing is they have like auto renews on as well,
Yeah.
so they probably don't even realise they're renewing it as long as
Yes.
there's some active bank account
And it's
that the
really
money's
tricky.
coming
What's
out.
the .eu situation though? So the UK was part of the EU, and when you left, there was that issue around the EU domain names.
Yeah, I mean, misleading or not, I mean, I would say,
So people were having to incorporate subsidiaries, weren't
yeah,
they?
some domain names have to have criteria, and if you don't meet the criteria for registration, you can't have that domain. In
So if you're
Australia,
carrying .eu, you
Yeah.
have to have an entity.
exactly,
presence
exactly. And it's not just there, in fact. In Australia, they've gone one step further. And to have a .com.au domain, you actually have to have a registered trademark.
Oh,
So they won't
okay.
actually let you take the domain until you've got a registered
I
trademark.
didn't know that.
that's
Yeah,
And that's
Do it with
Helpful.
social media handles as well, don't they?
Yes.
So they are stricter then, so they are
yes.
regulating
Yes.
a bit better.
So
Yeah,
before,
yeah.
I don't know what the equivalent of like Instagram is, but before you can have your name as that, they want
Yeah.
to see like a registered trademark.
Huh?
And and in China is also
That's it. It's in
China's
China,
also
isn't
doing the same thing. I mean, you need a registered trademark before you can sell anything online, because
So what are your views on that?
well, I think big question.
Yeah.
Good or bad?
I think it's good that there is a way of policing the registration of domains, because at the moment we've got thousands of domains out there that aren't being put to any commercial purpose, that people with genuine interest in using their domains could use, but are being prevented from doing so because the rules don't allow you to cancel the registration of a domain if it's registered before your brand. And I think that's a serious problem.
Yeah.
And it's something that it's a global issue. So in Australia, where they've kind of indirectly introduced legislation with respect to certain domains to ensure that there will be a trademark behind it, and if you lose the trademark, therefore you can't have the domain, it would be a clever way of circumventing the
knock
legislation.
out a lot of cyber squatters.
It would.
Yeah. But make your clearance searches, I suppose, more important if your trademark and your domain name are essentially linked.
Well,
Yes.
kind
You
of-
definitely want to.
especially your common little search, like just knowing you can type it in, and you know, if someone's got it,
But-
they've got a trademark. Like it kind of joins the dots a bit more
But
together.
as I said,
between registered and unregistered.
Yeah.
so there are things that could be done to kind of legislate and to control the situation as it is. The problem is with non-country specific domains, which we don't have a global government to decide what happens to them. And so it's kind of a situation where technology is advanced and our legal framework has not quite caught up with it
Left
yet.
behind.
I mean, there's things like there are international treaties on IP, which govern trademarks throughout the world. So they're on a similar framework. What I really feel is needed for brand protection is a similar global treaty on domain registration and the rules governing it. That's a
Let's get on with it.
yeah, let's go. Maybe that's the PhD that I should do. Oh, I've disclosed it, damn.
Yeah.
But no, I really feel that strongly because at the moment it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
The situation we're in now, where you've got clients who are really frustrated because they've got a really good brand, but they can't get the domain name.
Yeah.
I mean, it starts a little bit early with that for some businesses because there's individuals out there who will trade as sole traders, but if you want to incorporate a company, that company name is most likely going to be the source of your brand.
Yeah.
And also, people think just because they've got a name at Company's House,
Yeah.
they have the right to use it. So they say, it's registered there.
No. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a really, really common
Yeah.
mistake to think that, we've registered our company name, we have the right to use that company name in commerce, and that they think that gives them effectively the power of a trademark, but it really doesn't. And you've got to think, why haven't you trademarked your company name? I mean, it's the first and most obvious trademark that a company will have. So,
And it should really come hand in hand
Yeah.
with your incorporation.
But we
Yeah.
would think that, we're lawyers.
I know. Well, I keep saying we should offer a service that when a company incorporates with us, that we should run a trademark search to see if there's any problems and help them get a registration.
Absolutely.
But maybe that's a little bit too self-serving.
No, listen, it's been really fascinating talking to you all today. I think we've covered quite a few topics and hopefully given the listeners something to think about. But just to round off, top tip from each of you on how to make sure the world understands who you are.
Make your identity known, but do it in a way that isn't infringing. To put it nicely.
Choose your brands carefully.
Yes.
That would be top of my list as well. If you're thinking starting a new company or a new brand, do some research, do your homework, find out what's out there before you start using it.
Can I say something slightly different?
Yeah.
And we haven't touched on it. And that would be, so my top tip would be, if you're doing a logo, then turn the logo around in all dimensions to make sure that it doesn't have any adverse or unintended inferences. And also, if you're using your brand or you want to go global, make sure you get a cultural check, because words in one language can have a very different meaning, and we've all seen examples of that, some quite high profile. So
No, definitely.
Really useful. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So thanks for joining me today. This has been Created IP. Speak to you again soon.
Take care.